Tonight, we have to talk about a story that's, well, it's more than just a crime. It's a profound warning. It's a case that forces us to look at the absolute darkest parts of human nature and the horrifying price of silence. This right here, this is the question at the very heart of the Sylvia Likens story. It's a question that absolutely haunted Indianapolis back in 1965, and honestly, it still echoes today. We need to try and understand how something like this could have ever happened. Look, the story you're about to hear is incredibly difficult, but it's one that has to be told. By subscribing, you really do help us give a voice to those who are silenced, and you help make sure that victims like Sylvia are never, ever forgotten. Please, just take a second to join us in this mission. To really understand this tragedy, you first have to understand the girl. Because before she became this symbol of unimaginable suffering, Sylvia Likens was just a 16-year-old kid with a life full of simple teenage hopes. On one hand, Sylvia was a totally normal teenager for the time. She was a bit shy, but friendly, loved the Beatles, liked to go skating with her friends. But underneath all that, the reality of her family life was really tough. Her parents worked the carnival circuit, so they were always on the move. That meant money was tight, and they were gone for long stretches. This whole situation, it set the stage for a decision that would turn out to be fatal. So, needing to hit the road for work, Sylvia's parents left her and her little sister, Jenny, with Gertrude Baniszewski, a woman they hardly even knew. Her house on Denny Street in Indianapolis was, well, it was crowded, it was chaotic, but it was supposed to be a safe place for them, just for a little while. And this is what that safety was supposed to cost. $20 a week. It seems like such a small amount of money, right? But when her parents' payment showed up late one week, that $20, it became the seed of a resentment that would grow into something monstrous. The home that was meant to be a refuge, it turned into a prison. And the shift, it was just terrifyingly fast. What started as small punishments quickly spiraled into systematic daily torture. The spiral was it was incredibly fast. It started in July with beatings over that late payment. By August, all of Gertrude's rage was laser-focused on Sylvia. She was pulled out of school, totally isolated. By September, it had escalated to cigarette burns and starvation. And then, by October, Gertrude had turned Sylvia's torture into a sick neighborhood event, actually inviting her own children and other kids from the block to join in. This was so much more than physical abuse. It was a methodical campaign designed to strip Sylvia of every last piece of her humanity. She was starved, burned, forced to consume her own waste, and eventually just locked away in the basement, treated worse than an animal. The cruelty reached its absolute peak with this sentence. These words weren't just spoken, they were carved into her stomach by Gertrude and a neighborhood boy with a heated needle. It was a permanent brand of humiliation, a final twisted act of ownership over her pain. For 3 long months, Sylvia's nightmare was contained inside that house on Denny Street. But eventually, one small voice, just one, finally pierced through the silence. These were the words of Sylvia's younger sister, Jenny, whispered to a police officer. Just think about that. This terrified little girl who also suffered from polio somehow found the courage to expose the horror she'd been forced to watch. That single sentence, it brought everything crashing down. But it was too late. When the police finally entered that house, they found Sylvia's emaciated, brutalized body on a mattress in the basement. The official cause of death was a brain hemorrhage, but it was compounded by shock and severe malnutrition. The autopsy was a roadmap of pure horror, documenting over 150 separate injuries on her small frame. The discovery of Sylvia's body sent shockwaves across the entire nation. And the trial that followed would uncover not just the cruelty of one family, but the complicity of an entire neighborhood. So in the aftermath, the search for justice began. Gertrude Baniszewski was convicted of first-degree murder. But, incredibly, she was paroled after only 20 years. Her own kids and the neighborhood children who took part in the torture, they got sentences for manslaughter and served less than 2 years each. For so many people, these sentences just felt like an absolute betrayal of justice. The trial revealed a deeply, deeply disturbing truth. The neighbors had heard the screams. They had seen Sylvia's condition getting worse and worse, but they did nothing. They told themselves it was a family matter, that it wasn't their place to get involved. Their inaction created the vacuum, the space where this kind of evil was allowed to grow. But Sylvia's death, as senseless and tragic as it was not completely in vain. The sheer horror of what happened to her forced a change. It directly led to Indiana creating its mandated reporter law, which makes it a legal duty for anyone to report suspected child abuse. Her story has inspired art that continues to warn us. And today, a child advocacy center actually bears her name, protecting kids in a way she never was. You know, it's just impossible to separate the cold, hard facts from the emotion in a case like this. It's a story that it digs into you, and it stays with you long after you've heard it. For me, the deepest, most profound horror here isn't Gertrude Baniszewski. I mean, her evil is almost on another plane of existence. It's hard to even comprehend. No, the true horror is the silence. The silence of the dozens of people who could have stopped it. The neighbors, the other children, the adults who heard the screams and just turned up their radios. Sylvia wasn't just murdered, she was abandoned. And that is the ultimate lesson of her life. Remembering her isn't just about mourning a victim. It's about remembering our collective responsibility to each other. It's about understanding the terrible, terrible price of looking away and realizing that a failure of compassion can be just as deadly as a physical weapon. This case really forces all of us to ask a difficult question, doesn't it? What is our duty to one another? I genuinely want to know what you think. Please share your thoughts down in the comments. If you believe these stories absolutely must be told, please like this explainer and subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. Your support is what helps us continue this vital work of remembrance. Thank you for having the courage to hear Sylvia's story today. Thank you for choosing not to look away. We'll see you in the next one.